Welcome to the July the 21st, 1998 pre-taping of our August the 4th history, and we are very pleased today to bring you our history tape number 342 as we document the history of our city of Grand Prairie and some of the very important people that have made that history happen, and that some that are continuing to make history this very day. And we're very pleased to welcome to the dais today two very special people that have worked in the schools many long years here in the city of Grand Prairie, Mr. and Mrs. George Angel. Welcome, George, to the set.
Glad to be here.
Yes. And Jocelyn, we are so pleased to have you with us today. And you two are stalwart citizens of Grand Prairie. And with your permission, we'll go to Mr. George first. Is that okay? All right, and this is your camera, and we'd like for you to address your remarks casually to us and to your camera there, and tell us about the real George Angel and his family, and start out with your parents. Would you do that?
Yes, I'll be glad to.
All right.
I'm George Angel, Jr., my dad, George Angel, Sr., and my mother, Marie Jones Angel. I was born in Fort Worth, Texas, and later moved to Dallas, where I basically grew up between there and a country town, which is not a country town anymore, Allen, Texas, because my grandparents lived there, and I spent quite a bit of time back and forth between because, I don't know, I guess I was more oriented to the country life than I was the city.
Yes. All right. Did you have any brothers or sisters, George?
I had no brothers and sisters.
No, but an only child, a petted and pampered young man. Isn't that wonderful?
I guess so.
Yes, all that is really great. Okay, well, let's go back. You were born in Fort Worth, Texas.
Right.
Now, that's Tarrant County.
Right.
That's close by. That's really good. But you did migrate to Dallas, and what year were you born?
1931.
1931. That's a good year. Okay.
Back in the Depression.
All right. Moving over to Dallas, did you go to, where'd you begin your elementary school?
I went to Milam Elementary School, which was the Central Expressway now runs through what was the old playground of it. I think the school is still there.
Yes.
Owned a long junior high, as it was called in those days, and then to Woodrow Wilson High School, where I graduated in 1948.
Woodrow Wilson Wildcats, I believe.
Right, yeah.
Yes.
Back in those days, there was only 6 high schools, and now I don't know how many there are in Dallas.
Quite a multiplicity of them. All right, and beginning at Little Milam Elementary School in Dallas, can you bring to your memory any favorite teachers or favorite kids or real good buddy that you had at Milam that we could document?
Well, that was so long ago, I don't recall their names. I can picture the teachers. They seemed to be very old at the time because,
yes,
of course, I was just 6.
Yes.
And one thing that is a little different from today, I walked about 6 blocks to school each day and back, which nowadays, you know, they don't recommend children doing that, unfortunately, anymore.
Yes.
And I know there was kind of a joke. It's sad, but it was a joke. When I went to the 2nd grade, my 1st grade teacher passed away. And then when I went to the 3rd, my 2nd grade teacher passed away, and the kids, everyone said, well, you're a jinx to those poor teachers. You must have really been hard on them.
Yes,
so,
yes. That was very unusual, wasn't it?
Yes. Like I say, they were elderly.
Yes.
Seemed to be, anyway, at the time. So.
Yes. And then on to the Lawn Junior High?
Right. That was during the war years.
During the war years. Any special memories you have of Lawn Junior High, middle school?
Well, I remember my favorite teacher was a Ms. Atkins who taught history.
Yes.
And she was the ideal role model for students, all positive. You know, in those days, they didn't know about positive reinforcement. You just followed the rules or else, so to speak. And Ms. Atkins was a positive role model, and no matter what we did, she always encouraged us that we were doing good or could do better.
Oh, yes.
And then, of course, I went to Woodrow Wilson High School after that.
All right. Well, at Woodrow, when you went into Woodrow, do you remember your principal or some favorite teachers, or what was your favorite subject?
Yeah, well, I'll say my principal was a legend in Dallas, G.L. Ashburn, Pop Ashburn, they called him.
Yes.
And I Trying to think of some. I know Ms. Adams was my English teacher. She rode my case a lot, but when I got to college, it turned out I did so well in a pre-test that I tested out of freshman English. So at that time, I was glad I had her.
Yes.
And later, I will get into the college career, but I came back to Woodrow Wilson as a student teacher.
Oh, you did?
And Pop Ashburn called me professor.
Yes. Oh, that is really great.
And, you know, it's a little different. Of course, we had military training in high school in those days.
Yes.
ROTC was compulsory. Of course, it was during the war
Yes.
a lot of the time, and I guess they were just readying us for possible service. And we did a lot of early morning drill and competition among companies and things like that.
Yes.
And we just had our 50th reunion this past May.
All right.
Yeah. Unfortunately, after saying all that, I didn't get to go, but
Yeah.
I got all kinds of literature and lists on it, so it kind of brought back memories of a lot of the people I had kind of forgotten before I got the list. So.
Yes. All right. Well, we have you graduating from Woodrow Wilson High School in what year then?
1948.
1948. We
Right.
got you out of Woodrow in 1948. We're gonna leave you hanging loose for a minute.
Okay,
Is that all right?
that's fine.
We gotta get Miss Angel right up with you, and we need to start with her and her family. Would you like to do that for
Sure,
us? All
surely
right.
would.
All right.
Thank you. I went to school in many places,
All right.
many places. I went to school in Odessa, Texas, Farmersville, Texas, Alla Hubbard, Texas, Carrollton, Texas, and Allen, Texas. Now, why so many? Well, my dad was a teacher, and he was also administrator, and he moved where the jobs were.
All right. Would you give us his full name then?
My dad was W.H. Pete Mosley,
Okay.
and my mother was Ruth Marguerite Gant Mosley.
Mostly.
They both came from Collin County,
Okay.
and they were both teachers. Mother taught at a small community called Snow Hill, and my dad taught at a small community called Union. This was when you could teach when you were 18, and not having had any college yet, they would teach and then they'd go to school in the summer for their college work. Mother may have gone to school, and father too, my dad too, before they started teaching. Then they'd go back in the summer.
Yes.
They came from a family of others who taught, my uncles and aunts, and my grandfather, who was county school superintendent in Collin County for a time.
His name?
His name was Will Mosley,
All right.
J.W. Mosley.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
that's a wonderful old name in Collin County, isn't it?
Yes.
Right. Did you have any brothers or sisters?
Yes, I have 2 brothers and sister. My sister is Sharon Johnson, and I have 2 brothers, Wendell Gant Mosley and John Mosley.
Okay. And are they in the area? Do they live in the area?
Well, my two brothers live in Texas. John is works in a bank at Pilot Point, Texas, and my brother teaches in school at Yoakum, Texas.
Good.
My sister is in the North Woods in Maine. She's a dean of instruction there in the University of Maine at Fort Kent.
Oh, that is wonderful. All right, and growing up as a young lady and going to all of these schools in Odessa and Farmersville and Carrollton and Allen and all the places where your dad was moved around, where did you begin your elementary school?
I began in Odessa.
In Odessa.
And I remember being able to paint. It was, as I look back, it was one of the forward-thinking communities because it was in the oil boom
Yes, it
at
was.
that time. And so
And they had art.
and they had art, and they had music. And my teacher, whose name I do not remember, she was wonderful, and I did love that. And then my dad took a turn to go work in the oil fields, but that wasn't his thing. He got back into teaching, and we came back to Collin County. But I guess my favorite teacher was my 1st and 2nd grade teacher at Alla Hubbard, which is close to Salina, Texas. Her name was Mrs. Klein. And I remember she had the problem a lot of us teachers have of losing their voice, and I remember she let me be her spokesman one day when she had no voice.
How wonderful. What an experience for a young child. Oh, that was really great, wasn't
A
it?
6-year-old.
For a 6-year-old. All right, and then on from elementary school into middle school. Did you have a middle school, or did you go on into high?
Well, I went into Allen School, Allen High School. It was a 12, all grades were there in that one building.
All right.
And I went in at the 4th grade, and it was called junior high. And my favorite teacher there had to be my dad.
Oh, yes. Yes.
Dad was my science teacher, and I remember him doing a science experiment, which a lot of kids have seen, where the egg is pulled into the, we think, is pulled into the milk bottle.
Yes.
And my second favorite teacher was Mrs. Helvey, and she taught social studies, and I taught with her later when I went to school at North Texas in college.
All
Worked
right.
with her.
And then you graduated from Allen
High School in 1952.
1952, a good magic year, wasn't it? Yes. And all the time that you were in high school, what was your favorite subject in high school, and were you involved in any of the sports or anything else that we need to know about?
My favorite.
Or academics?
Well, I guess the one that gave me the most grief that I worked the hardest on was math.
Yes.
My dad was 2 years my math teacher, and then Dad went to another job, and I was able to have 2 more favorite teachers, a Mr. Bowers and a Mr. Raymond Curtis. Now, I guess my most favorite activity in high school was playing basketball.
Basketball. Yeah. Oh, that's great. What position did you play on?
I was a guard, and my
Guard.
last year I was the co-captain, and we won by district that year.
Oh, that is great.
Yeah.
That's a wonderful memory, isn't it?
Yes,
Oh.
it was an opportunity for girls to be a team member.
Yes.
And whereas, you know, we might have been expected to just do a few things as women, playing on a basketball team lets you know you could work on a team in a bigger area.
Yes. Oh, that's great. We're going to get back with you in a few minutes, but now let's
Thank
get
you.
back with Mr. George. And we have you out of high school, and then where are we going with your career?
Well, in 1948, I enrolled at North Texas State College, and I had a major. It was business at first, but I took enough education so I could have a minor in education, and so I ended up with a business education degree,
Yes.
on which I graduated in 1952.
All right. And when you graduated from college, what happened then?
Well, I thought I wanted to be in business, but I was kind of torn between business and education. I tried a year in business working for the Dr. Pepper Company
All right.
at the building they've demolished over on Mockingbird. I just, that time, lived a block from it, and I could walk to work. But then after that, I said, well, this is just a lot of detail and paperwork. I would like to try education. So I filled out some application forms different places and had some interviews and had a choice at a job down at Malakoff. But a couple of days, maybe a week before I took that job, I got a call from Allen. Her favorite teacher was also the superintendent there later, Gene Curtis. Mm-hmm. And he asked me if I'd like to come up and teach business at Allen High School. So I said, well, sure. I'd sure like to give it a try. And of course, I went up there. It was a small, what we'd call country school in those days. As she said, all 12 grades were in the same building even. And it was such a rewarding experience, an exciting experience, that, I don't know, I just got more and more excited. Stayed there 3 years.
Yes.
And then I'm getting out of the context here, but we got married then in 1956, at which time she was teaching in Dallas. And so we moved on, and Mr. H.H. Chambers called me. He had gotten my name somewhere and asked if I'd like to come out and interview in Grand Prairie.
Yes.
That was 1957.
All right.
And Joyce was, am I getting into your story
Oh,
here?
go right ahead.
She was teaching in Dallas at the time and kind of thought she would stay there and I would teach over here. Mr. Chambers said, no, we need both of you over here.
Oh, great.
So did you ever interview or just walk? She never even interviewed with him. She just reported to A.B. King down at Fannin.
Yes.
And I've reported to Travis Elementary, and we just started here, and that was 57.
In 1957, when you started at Travis, were you teaching or principal?
I was teaching then.
You were teaching.
Yeah,
And
I
what
taught there 9 years.
And what was your job?
Sixth grade teacher, and then we had the little elementary
Okay.
sports. I coached the elementary kids in sports.
All right. And who was your principal? Jack Robinson?
Jack Robinson.
Jack
right.
Robinson was the principal there.
Yeah,
Oh,
he was a real nice fellow to work for.
Yeah, I bet he
real
was.
down to earth, you know, and easygoing, and that's, I guess, what stimulates you to work harder when, you know, you're turned loose and expected to do the job.
I'm going to leave you at Travis just a
Okay.
minute, and then we're going to get back over to Jocelyn.
Okay.
All right. Jocelyn, what happened to you at college?
Well, at college, I was able to help pay my way through college working in the dormitory, and I went there 3.5 years, graduated early, and got a job in Dallas.
Were you at North Texas also?
Yes, I'm sorry. Yes,
Uh-huh.
I was at North Texas.
North Texas
Uh-huh.
also. And your major?
My major was elementary education.
You knew what you wanted to do.
Yes, and I had I took music courses. I enjoyed playing the piano, and so I did take music. I didn't take a minor, but I did have some.
And where'd you meet George?
Well, George was playing, and you're going to hear of this again, but he was playing in a band, and they had called his group to come play for a square dance there at
right.
Allen. This was
At
in
Allen,
the summer
Texas.
at Allen, Texas, and I may have met him when he was younger because he played with one of my neighbors, but that's so far back I don't remember. But I do remember when I first saw him was he was playing music,
Yeah.
and it was a Western type band, and so that's where we met. And I knew his grandmother and grandfather, and so it was kind of like hometown folk,
Yes,
you know.
uh-huh.
And I also was going to school in the summer, and one time I needed a ride home, and so I called a friend of George's and mine and asked if I might ride with them because, you know, transportation.
Yes.
And so I got to meet him a little bit further then on our trip back from Denton to
Yes.
Allen.
Yes. And so then we married in, I believe you said, in 1956.
Yes.
Or I believe you gave us that date. I'm not substantiating that with her. And so when you married and you were teaching then, did you go on into teaching right away?
I was teaching, I'm trying to think, I was teaching at Albert Sidney Johnston. It's at that time, it was an all-white school. It
Yes.
was before we integrated.
Yes.
And I guess the most momentous thing is when we had a tornado over there, and it blew away part of some of the streets in South Oak Cliff, and
Yes.
our school was there. And our principal had to ask us to help keep the parents in the building because it was so dangerous. They were coming to get the children out of the school. So that was my memory of that
Memory of
school.
Oak Cliff and the tornado.
Yes.
Yes. And were you what school were you with when you were invited to come to Grand Prairie?
I stayed with Albert Sidney Johnston, and then we came over to Grand Prairie, and it was really a good thing because then you didn't have two cars.
Yes.
You had
Yeah.
one
Had one
car,
car.
and I would, when we moved here, and I would drop George at Travis. I'd drive over to Fannin where I taught.
Yes.
When I finished my day, I'd come back out and sit in front of Travis while they practiced football.
Yes,
and
and
then
right.
we went home.
Uh-huh. And did you buy your home here in Grand Prairie, Texas?
Yes, out on Indian Hills.
In Indian
First
Hills?
home we ever owned.
Yes, that was.
Back to her Albert Sidney Johnson days too. She might mention the PE teacher there was Jim Huey, who's president now at Dallas ISD as superintendent.
Yes, yes.
And
Well,
Jim and I
work
worked
together.
together out there.
that is wonderful. All right, we have you at Travis for how long?
I was in Travis as a teacher for 9 years.
All right.
I think that's right. And then in 1966, Mr. Chambers appointed me as principal. Mr. Bill Arnold had been the
Of what
principal.
school?
Travis.
At Travis?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, and we didn't have the intern programs like they do now where they
Yes.
train
and
administrators
move you
for several
around.
years. He just said, you
You're
can do
it.
the job, here's the keys, you know. So I stayed there 3 years
All right.
and enjoyed that too, had a wonderful staff there. And then some of the central staff people talked, let's see, superintendent then was Browning Combs,
All right.
and talked him into expanding the central staff because they were kind of overworked with the ones they had. So they asked me to come up and work with curriculum and a whole lot of jobs, special ed and other things that they had built in, writing all the federal grants to, at that time, federal money was beginning to be available for public education. And so I stayed there 6 years. But again, kind of like the business job, it was just a little too much paperwork and not getting
Not enough
out,
kids,
right,
not
and
enough
not out on the
kids.
front lines. So they asked, I said, well, I'd asked a couple of times, and no, we need you up here. But finally, a new superintendent came in, Dr. Leo Bradley, so he allowed me to go to Eisenhower School,
Yes.
where I stayed.
That became your home then for a long,
Yeah,
long
13 years.
13 years principal.
Yeah, and of course people said, well, you live right down the street from the school, you think that's healthy? But as it turned out, it was very, very good.
Very
I
convenient,
knew
wasn't
the
it?
kids at school and in the neighborhood too, and so it was a real wholesome situation.
I'm going to leave you at Eisenhower and find out where Mrs. Angel was during this time. She started at Fannin, and where did you progress to?
Well, as I taught at Fannin, I took some time off to have my 2 girls.
And let's have their names now.
Okay, I have, my oldest is Carol Ashley Mount, and my youngest is Julie Kay Pate.
And where are they?
Carol is working with Battered Women's Shelter in Arlington.
All right.
And Julie is a mother of a 6-year-old and a 4-year-old, Emily and Jonathan, and they live in Austin.
Oh, they do. The grandparents are 300 miles away, but that's all right, isn't it? That is wonderful. And then after having your family, did you go back into teaching?
I did. I went in at Austin
All right.
Elementary, and I went there when Mr. Eisenhower was the principal. And then one of George's principals came to be my principal, Mr. Robinson.
Yes.
And then Ms. Burton was my principal, and then Mr. Martin,
Yes.
Delmas Martin.
Mr. Delmas Martin.
And I finished my career there
At Austin.
at Austin Elementary.
After how many years at Austin?
Well,
20?
it was 20, probably. I'm not sure exactly.
Yes.
Yes.
That's a wonderful career, and we're going to get with you in just a minute on some of the wonderful things you're doing since your career. Anything else you want to talk about that did you retire from Eisenhower as principal?
No, in 1988, I was asked to finish out my career at Garner Elementary.
All right.
It was a new school at the time. And of course, I'd done everything in the north part of town, so it was a pleasure to get out and meet people and see how the community out
Yes.
far south
Yes.
was and how they thought. And it's a lot of new young couples, generally speaking, out south,
Yes.
especially in the Westchester area. So, and I enjoyed, they were wonderful too, as were the people at Eisenhower.
So you ended your career at Garner.
Right.
All right.
Joyce failed to mention, we do have one other grandson, Carol's little boy,
All
who's
right.
12. His name is Alex,
Oh, good.
and I thought we better give him billing.
Oh, yeah, we better get him even time, hadn't we? We're in bad trouble, wouldn't we?
Yeah.
All right, I know that you have many activities in the city. You play in a band, sing
Yeah,
with a group.
Yes, to both.
All right.
Actually, it's the same group. We had several different bands here in Grand Prairie that just did charitable, concerts to various groups, churches, civic clubs, and things like that. And most of those moved away, and it was hard to get 5 or 6 people together to rehearse or to go to shows because they all had their own families and all. Yeah. But we have 3 retired people now who have a little more time, and we call ourselves the Sagebrush Trio.
All right, name the rest of them besides you.
Okay, two old-time Grand Prairie people, Marshall Page
All right.
and Troy Sproles.
All
They've
right.
both been here since as long as I have,
Yes.
or longer. And we play 2 or 3 times a month as a rule. Again, at the same type, retirement homes, churches, adult fellowships,
Clubs.
yeah, clubs. And we play in Dallas. We even played for the retired Western Union operators
Yeah, that's great.
over in South on I-35, and it's just been real rewarding to be able to take our quote music skills and entertain people, and we get callbacks on many of our shows.
Were you with the Lions Club?
With the Lions Club, right?
right.
Still presently a member. Served as president there the first year I retired. I told them wait till I retired so I'd have a
Put
little
in
more
your time.
Yeah, right.
That is the host
And,
Lions Club.
Yeah, the host lines, and then
Okay.
of course we have the Grand Prairie Retired Teachers Association
And your church?
and the First United
First
Methodist.
United
Yeah.
Methodist,
We're
okay.
active in that, pretty active.
All right, we're going to get, we have 2 more minutes. We've got to give equal time, you know.
Okay.
All right, about the rest of your career and some of the things you're holding on to there that we got to show and tell a little bit.
Well, this is George's grandmother's bell. She was a teacher in Collin County.
Oh, I love that. Isn't that
She'd let
wonderful?
the kids go to recess, and then she'd call them in with the bell.
With that little bell.
But she had kids.
And it was your grandmother's.
Yeah, she taught for a couple of years. And they had kids in this one-room school, all from 6-year-old to 18.
Yes.
And the bigger boys, when they go to recess, wouldn't come back. So she'd have to report to their parents, and then they got them back quick.
Oh, I bet they did too. What else do we have there?
Oh, well,
My daughter Carol has
Yes.
done a family, and I just to show you that history follows in my family.
Yes.
She's done a booklet on all our families.
How
But,
wonderful.
my grandmother Mosley and the Angelia family, which is Angels,
Yes.
and the Kennedys and the Joneses, and
Oh, that is great. And how about your paper that you've done about the history of Grand Prairie? Don't forget that one.
well, I'm glad that they're still interested in it
Yes.
because for me it was interesting. I taught over at Fannin. We went down to the Bowles Park where the Jordan Bowles home was, where it showed there used to be a stagecoach there.
Yes.
And I taught that to my kids. Our library is very good for our history, and I hope people will use it. At that time, it had a vertical file, and anything you'd want to know about Grand Prairie is there. And to help me teach the kids, I did a history of Grand Prairie, and of course it's rather
invaluable.
old.
It's invaluable to us today. We do a lot of research and a lot of reference to it, and we've run out of time, wouldn't you know? And I'm so thankful for y'all. And you do such a good job, Jocelyn, with the Kids Incorporated for the Women's Club and many other things in town I know of. But that is one of the shining stars. You've been just invaluable to them and taking care of the children and the boys and the girls. And we thank you for the time y'all have given, not only to Kids Incorporated, but to the kids, period. And thank y'all for being such stalwart citizens. And I want to thank you for this interview. It's been tremendous. And this is Ruthie Jackson reminding you that history is as we live and do.